Yeah, this tweet is from Jeremy Kaufman. He says, a fact that changed my perspective on multiculturalism. At all income levels, blacks are 5 to 10 times more violent and criminal than whites. Crime rates will vary by region or income, but inside of any subgroup, the ethnical ratio seems to hold. If you know contradictions, please share. This fact hasn't changed how I interact with any black individual. The majority of blacks are non-criminal, and facts about groups are never conclusions about individuals, which is so true. But facts about groups are still facts. If the proposal is to change the demographic makeup of America, it is not woke to notice that this is likely to change America. That's everything.
And we're back. All right. In the aftermath of Liberation Day, Trump declaring tariffs on basically the entire world, here are some of the headlines. Stocks in free fall as China hits back with 34% tariffs. Stocks plunge as China responds to Trump's tariffs. Wall Street slides as trade war escalates. So a lot of gloom in the financial markets. People's 401ks taking a hit, the stock market plunging. But the Trump administration insists that things are still going okay. And how do we make sense of all this? What is really going on? Well, let's bring in our guest. James Galbraith is an author and professor of economics at the University of Texas at Austin. His latest book is Entropy Economics, The Living Basis of Value and Production. James Galbraith, thanks for joining us on the Jimmy Dore Show.
Thanks very much for having me on.
Help us make sense of all this. Trump announced that this was Liberation Day, that this is now a time to make America wealthy again, but so far it's not looking so good, and there's a lot of panic in the stock market. How do you make sense of what is happening right now with Trump's tariffs?
Well, I think we're seeing one of the largest shocks to the stable functioning of the economy since the early 1980s, when Paul Volcker raised interest rates to 20%, and that also, or unless you want to count the pandemic, but basically the largest policy shock since the early 1980s. And it is obviously going to disrupt the existing pattern. To come back to the effect of tariffs as such, if you go all the way back to the early 1930s, when tariffs were put up very sharply by the Congress, a major effect was on the financial markets, as it made it very hard for certain businesses to cover their debts. And as a result of that, there was a considerable shock to the banking system, which ultimately precipitated the Great Depression. So one has to expect a lot of repercussions from this, and that's what we're seeing.
I want to get your response to Stephen Miller, a top aide to Trump. He was on Fox News defending Trump's tariff, saying that, look, we already are in a depression, and so a drastic measure like this needs to be taken. This is what he said.
You guys are all about growth. I know you're about lowering taxes, rolling back regulations, and seeing that growth. Are you concerned that this is going to put us into a recession?
The exact opposite. We inherited from Joe Biden an economy in total freefall. There has been zero jobs growth for American workers in 4 years. In other words, all jobs growth had gone to foreign workers. That is a depression, not a recession. That is a depression for the American worker. We had debt and deficits that were rising unsustainably that would lead us into a certain debt and deficit crisis. We had inflation that was in high double digits, crushing the American family, making it impossible to afford the essentials of life. We had an economy that was in a state of calamity and catastrophe.
So what's your response to this? Because although many people might take issue with him saying we were in a depression, certainly things were not great. Prices were high. There was a huge demand for jobs, and relatively unstable. And certainly there's a lot of people who can't find steady jobs, don't have employment stability. So what do you make of his claim here that we already were in a depression and therefore the tariffs had to be imposed?
Well, there was a lot of dissatisfaction with the condition of the economy in the last year or two of the Biden term. But it certainly wasn't a high unemployment rate. That was down in the 3.5% rate. It's still very close to that. The inflation rate, cost of living had gone up dramatically, but the inflation rate itself had topped off and stabilized. So I don't think one can say that Trump inherited an economy in depression. His concern, and the concern of the people around him, is that over a very long period of time, the American economy has deindustrialized and has become highly dependent upon foreign sources for all kinds of consumption goods. And that is certainly true. The question is whether one can unscramble that omelet and what the consequences of attempting to do it, which they're clearly setting out to do, will be. This is obviously not something that's going to be resolved over the course of a week, but surely it should be expected that the initial shock will be quite severe, and it will include a shock to capital asset values, because that's the companies that have been propping up the stock market are highly internationalized. They're heavy exporters from the information sector, in particular high technology. And when you sever their supply chains and sever their markets, their fate is very much in question.
I mean, I'm not sure if you can make a prediction, but how long do you think a shock like this will endure? I mean, people are looking at their 401ks, their retirement savings accounts. They've seen a big dip. I mean, do you anticipate that this slide will continue?
Oh, sorry. The question about 401ks?
Yeah, and people just worried that, people seeing the value of their 401ks decline pretty much overnight. I mean, do you anticipate that this will continue over a prolonged period, or is this just an initial reaction to such a shock announcement from Trump?
Well, the stock market had gone up by maybe 50% over the 2023-24 period. So it was already at historic highs. It went up additionally after Trump was elected for whatever reason, anticipation of tax cuts and further stimulus programs. And of course, what we're getting instead is one of the largest tax increases on the American consumer. And we'll have to see what happens in terms of the further policy measures. Obviously, the Republicans are going to come in with another very big tax cut to offset that and shift the burden of taxation onto the tariffs and away from maybe the income tax. So we will see how that all pans out in terms of the economy as a whole. But again, what we're seeing here is the initial shock. The stock market is down a little over 10% from its peak, and I wouldn't say that that we're in Great Depression territory yet. I mean, from 1929 to 1930, the stock market lost 90% of its value. We're a long way from that. Although the future, is difficult to predict with an administration that is as dramatic in the moves that it's prepared to make as this one.
What's your sense of what Trump's motive is here? Now, his critics will say that this is just an effort to get basically some short-term revenue from tariffs, which he will then use to justify his aim for more massive tax cuts for the wealthy. That's the critique I'm hearing from the progressive side, from the Democratic side. Whereas
I'm inclined to take him more or less at his word that he sees the economy as something which is fundamental. Took a wrong turn a long time ago. Now there were a lot of us who don't entirely disagree with that. That this was the path to globalization was a path that hollowed out the industrial states of the United States. I worked in the early 1980s for the Joint Economic Committee. The chair was a congressman from Milwaukee named Henry Royce, and we watched this happen. As Paul Volcker raised those interest rates, the dollar went up by 40 to 60%, and the advanced capital goods producing firms, the machine tool makers in Milwaukee and Cleveland and Toledo, all went bust, and they never came back. And that then set out, first of all, the rise of imports from Germany and Japan, and then ultimately from China. That developed a very deeply interconnected global economy that we have now. And Trump has been around, and he's seen this as well, and he's apparently attempting to reverse it. My issue with what he's doing is that I don't believe it's quite possible to recover the position that has been eroded over 40 or 50 years. As regrettable as that is, it seems to me that he just put up a price barrier on imports. The first thing you're going to do is disrupt the existing economy, and we're seeing the effect of that. We're going to greatly depress the living standards of working Americans, and you're going to make it very possible for some companies, the ones that are mostly internal or prepared to move back to the country very quickly, to operate under very high prices. And will they be tempted to expand their capacity, increase their output, and improve their competitiveness? That's really doubtful. They will be in a very good market position to exploit the closed market that they'll be enjoying. And I expect that's given the way American capitalism works, that's what I expect them to do. I think there will be some companies that will come back and some companies that will invest from Europe. But this is not the general phenomenon that you see when you give a lot of essentially monopoly power to a small number of business leaders. They tend to exploit it. That's what they're about.
Talk to us more about why you do not think it's possible for Trump to achieve his goal of reversing this 40-year deindustrialization.
You need to lean into your mic. Oh, sorry, I can't.
Just talk to us more about why you do not think it's possible that Trump can achieve his goal of reversing this 40-year slide into deindustrialization and bringing jobs back, bringing manufacturing back.
Well, there are two things going on in the Trump program so far as one can figure it out at this point. The tariffs are obviously a very big shock to the economy. And the other thing is the disruption of the federal government and the elimination of regulatory agencies and consumer protections and the attack on the National Labor Relations Board and on labor power, generally speaking. So what one sees here is on the one hand, this protectionist move, and on the other hand, a kind of free market libertarian approach, which is not going to work to the benefit of the working Americans who voted for Mr. Trump. And I think they're going to find that the disillusionment here is going to be quite substantial and pretty fast.
All right, let's get a quick break in, and we'll be right back. More with James Galbraith after this.
Hey, free speech is under attack, but Rumble refuses to back down. We've always believed in empowering voices, no matter how unpopular, and now we're taking that fight to the next level. When major advertisers conspired to pull their dollars, even brands like Dunkin' Donuts turned their backs, claiming Rumble had a right-wing culture. But we're not here to fit a mold. We're here to defend free expression. To strengthen this mission, we're excited to offer Rumble Premium, a completely ad-free experience with exclusive benefits for viewers and creators. You'll find exclusive content from creators like Russell Brand, Dr. Disrespect, Timcast, and the Mug Club with Crowder. It's more than just a subscription. It's a stand for free speech. Your voice matters. Join Rumble Premium. For a limited time, you can get $10 off an annual plan using promo DORE10. Visit Rumble today. Go visit rumble.com/premium/DORE10 and claim your discount today. Together, we can turn the tide, whether you join Rumble Premium or simply keep watching. Your support helps keep free speech alive.